Hello, this is Chris from Optinet, and in this video we're going to look at how you can run your recalls and also all of the relevant customization and setup that you can do. So when we talk about a patient recall in Flex, this is the correspondence they're going to get when they're due for their sight exam or their contact lens or both. I use the word correspondence because this could be through letters, text messages, emails. We're going to look purely at how to run the recalls on an everyday basis and then some of the setup which is available in them too. So what we're going to do is log into Flex and you'll find the recalls on the bottom right hand corner of your home screen. It's under what's called timeline. If you can't see this, you can use the button of change widgets. That affects the quadrants you see on the screen, but as Flex default, you will see this on the bottom right hand corner. What you're going to see is all the items which are due to be sent up to and including today's date, hence why we've got the today's date here. And we can see here the mixture of different methods of how we're contacting people and the total that's shown. This number has been accruing since you last ran your recalls, or if you've never done them, since the date that one of the support team has set them for you on the system. So what we can do is double click and that will take us into the recall window and it will open up all of the correspondence for the patients due to be contacted. What we can do here is we can customize if we wish to just see the certain contact method, but in here, just to talk you through the columns, patient's reference number, their title, first name, surname, age, scheduled date and recall date. Having a look at this one, their recall date here is the 1st of March, but their scheduled date is the 1st of September. This is because this is a later reminder and it's due to go out 6 months later. The letter one here for telephone shows it's slightly better than that one. If we look here at this REM2 letter, I'll tell you and I'll show you how we get to it in a moment, that's due after 3 months. That's why the scheduled date is the 1st of September with the recall date being the 1st of June. It's got the category that they were put on. That's the one that's chosen at the end of the sight exam or the contact lens, how they're being contacted and the name of that template. So there's 64 due to send, and to send them, all we need to do is push this envelope here, the envelope with the arrow in it, and what it'll do is it'll send all the text messages, send all the emails, we'll speak about telephone calls in a moment, and letters, those will all go based on your default format. So the letter format here, no bearing on the text or the email, just how the printed ones go out, whether you print them in practice, maybe you export it out to a spreadsheet for a third-party system. You use labels, that's the Avery labels, 7x3 as it were, 3 across, 7 down on an A4 sheet, 21 on each. Web post if you're using that third party, or DocMail if you're using those ones, and we can help you out as necessary if you do use one of those. So you press that, they'll all go, and that will just leave the telephone calls. For the telephone calls, if we right click in here, we can record a phone call, and we can just, as you go through, you can use this as a tick list to say when you've done them. When a patient books in for an appointment, or indeed when their next exam is put on, they'll go out of this list. But if you do want to just manually mark them as done, then if I tick done, just watch that 64 for me. If we tick done, down to 63, 2, 1, and indeed if we want to, we can take these out of the list, right click and remove from timeline. So that's how we would send them. Quick word on the letters if you are printing them out in practice. Let's say the printer's chewed it up, you've run out of ink, essentially you need to reprint it. If you click into items sent, that's just to the right of to be processed, then the screen is identical, but you can just tick on the one that you need to resend, push resend, and off they'll go. If you're needing to print out a report just of everything you've done, or purely of the telephone ones, if you prefer to do things on paper, you can get those reports there. But once we send them all, that would then reset our numbers to 0 and they'll start accruing again. We intentionally do this as an up to and including date, not a from and to, so nothing can be missed. So upon sending and closing this window, they'd all go back down to 0, and you can always refresh it by pressing that button just there. This little graph one here, that just shows how the recalls have been accruing and since when. So that's been accruing as we'd expect from the 1st of September when I last sent out my reminders. So that's how to send them. In the second half of this video, we're going to talk about the whats, the whens, and the hows. So by that, I mean, how are we contacting patients? So text, email, letter. When are you contacting patients? When they're due after 3, 6, 12 months. And also what you're sending. So linking in the relevant template on the system. To do this, we're going to click to Menu and Setup. And when that opens up, we're going to head to examinations. I'm going to focus on the sight exam side of this, though the contact lens is identical. And the sight exam here, we've got your sight examination categories. Most practices will split these by, I'm going to call it condition. I appreciate being a child or over 60 isn't a condition, but by that I mean it's sending out relevant information to that patient based on them being under 16, over 60, indeed diabetic, glaucoma. It could be, though, that you're going to have high spender, low spender, max effort. There's different categories you can do. There's not a right or wrong answer on this. There's so many symposiums at every event that you go to, as you know about the perfect form of recall. But in my experience, I'm going to tell you what I found works best. So what we can do is these categories that you do have set, then we can just set the age range and the default number of months for them, but the optometrist can change that at the end of exam. What we're going to do is set up a schedule. So here we can see on this children's one, they're going to get a text message when they're due, a letter after 3 months, and a phone call after a further 3, i.e. 6 months. What if they don't have a mobile phone number, though, or an email address? What we can do is set a substitute, and that's why it's showing that as a substitution. It's an assumption, which is dangerous, of course, but we can assume that every patient will have a postal address on your system. Again, your practice and how you work may be different, but we can chat about that. So you can see here a schedule. So I'm just going to create one here called example. It can be on it for anyone from 16 to 110. I might be slightly optimistic, but why not? And it's going to be a 12-month default. So what I'm going to need to do is create the recall category now. So as a first reminder, I'm going to choose how I'm contacting that patient. I'm going to say it's a text message, and it's going to be their sight test recall. All of these templates it's showing here in step 2, this links to your communication setup where you can choose your text, your emails and your letters. When they're going to be contacted, due date by default, so we'll leave that as it is. But then a substitute. So if this patient doesn't have a mobile number, or indeed they don't want to get text messages from you, then I'm going to set they're going to get a letter instead, and that letter is going to be called REM1. The good thing, in my opinion, about doing a text message first is a lot of patients only just need that quick nudge or a sentence to say, look, Chris, you due, come and see us. That's fine. It cost pennies compared to a lot more that a letter would, and it's a very effective form of recall. But we'll set a letter just in case that patient doesn't have a text message, a mobile phone number, sorry. Next up, I'm going to send a letter after 3 months. This has given them a little bit of a chance to act on it. We all have busy lives, so don't get around to things straight away. But I'm going to set a reminder 2 to go after 3 months. So with a letter, of course, a little bit more expense, but it gives us a chance to be a little bit more conversational and a bit more formal with the letter. And I'm going to set that to go after 3 months. No substitute, because I'm happy that they'll have a postal address on their record. And now I'm going to set, after 6 months, I'm going to set a telephone call. No template as such, it'll just appear in the report we saw in the first window, but after 6 months I want them to get a phone call. And that now has created our recall schedule. As I mentioned before, no right and wrongs for how some people do these. It might be that you're wanting to contact patients after 12, 24, 36, 48 months. I've seen practice contacting people after 5 years still, and for every not known this address, not interested bounce back they can get a hefty dispense out of it as well. You might find people might be transient with their mobile numbers or email addresses, but with telephone calls, you can just be subjective to find out why a patient hasn't come back to you, so that might be a useful thing to try. But what we've done here is set up the schedule, and everyone who's put onto that in the future will now get that content. Couple of other places which we look at recalls as well. In your appointment reasons, here are all your different appointment reasons. You can watch other videos and content on the portal about this, but what I'm focusing on are the suppress ST and the suppress CL columns here. So to suppress is to kind of pause something or just get rid of it for temporarily. So what we can do here is, for certain reasons we choose, it's going to suppress the reminder. So if someone books a sight test, then Flex will not send them any correspondence if that is ticked. So I want to see this ticked for all sight test reasons, but not for a collection. Did a support call recently where someone had added a new reason, they ticked every box, it was for collection. So the week after their exam, it was then stopping their letter going out in the future. So it's always worth making sure that this is all set up correctly with us. CL, of course, for the contact lenses. Any changes you make with the appointment reasons or indeed the examinations, then you might see this little yellow triangle on your home screen in Flex, letting you know that a timeline rebuild is required, so to contact the Optinet support team if needed. The timeline rebuild, we mentioned that anyone put onto the categories with the changes we've made moving forward will get that new content, but that's just to let us know that you will need a rebuild for anyone who's been put on those categories retrospectively. My point is, anyone before the changes would still be on your old configuration. We can run that with you just to make sure that it's bang on, because of course this is your revenue generation as well as the clinical reasoning for people coming through the door. So what we'd do is run a timeline rebuild with you. I'd recommend we do that with you, as I say. So give us a ticket through the portal, flexhelp.co.uk, or you can tweet us, email us, drop a comment on this video. You can call us if you need to as well. So lots of different ways that we can help you with that. That's just a bit of an overview about how we'd run the reminders in Flex and some of the relevant setup information behind it. Do check out my blog entry, by the way, on the portal. It's called Flexpertise. I'm very proud of that name. And that talks you through a lot of the things that I found from my many years of experience in practices, helping patients and practices with their patient recall. So do let me know if there's anything that you want to chat about through there. Reminder, of course, that you can find more help by clicking on the blue question mark in Flex. That opens up the portal and it'll open up the relevant screen that we're on. So through the home screen, again, we can get through to find recalls. Anything we put in here, of course, we can search by. So just for example, to continue the conversation, how do I run recalls? I click on that, everything which we've just been through, it's talking you through how all of this works. And of course, you can raise a ticket and check all of yours online too. Please do let me know if you need help with that. So as always then, thank you very much for being an Optinet Flex customer. Reminder that we're always here to help with all of these videos and the information online. And the best of luck with the changes that you make to your recall system in Flex.